Ko tahuarangi te waka ko rangi tukutuku te aho ko piki mai rau e te matau ko te wenua te koro mai. The name of the canoe is tahuarangi. The name of the fishing line was rangi tukutuku. The name of the hook was known as piki mai rauia. And the name of the fish while it was under the sea was te whenua te koro mai. According to our kōrero of te kāhui maunga kōrero from a taranaki whānui perspective, our monganui, our kōrero emanates out of te wahātai and te kāhui maunga. The name of the canoe of Maui's oldest brother, Maui Mua, was known as Tahuarangi, in which Maui hid himself on. And we know the story that how Maui they went out to sea, and eventually Maui hauled up his great catch. But according to our narrative, the name of the fishing line was known as Rangi Tukutuku, which has a strong correlation to Ahumahi and Matairangi, and Pukeahu, Waimanga, Waimapihi, and then the name of the fishing hook was Rangi Tukutuku.
Right.
Piki mai rauia. And the name of the fish while under the sea was known as te whenua te koro mai. Now, according to the early ethnographers, they could not understand our science, the science of Te Ao Māori. And as we've experienced just over these last couple of years, Pākehā scholars are saying that there's no such thing as Māori science. Well, Rangi's demystified that, and we've always believed that there's our science and the lack of understanding from these ethnographers. So we flip it upside down and go from te whenua te korowai, piki mai rauia, rangi tukutuku and tahuarangi. It's quite clear for us, Te Ao Māori. And te whenua is a classical term for lava movement underneath the water, platonic plate movements. Piki mai rauia is the oozing out of the ocean. Rangi tukutuku has a strong correlation with the moon in terms of te aurona, te au kukume, and the magnetic pull. And tahuarangi is toes to set a light, and the rangi is the sky. So if you look at it as from a general perspective, if one was just to translate it word for word, it would not make sense. And so what we're actually talking about is platonic plate movements out in the middle of the Pacific, given that all those islands in the Pacific are volcanic mass. And so it tells us that Maui was there when they discovered the fish exploding out of the water. And you can just go on Google and pinpoint volcanic mass explosions in the Pacific. You'll see nearly every island in the Pacific has come out of volcanic mass. And so the science for us is that. And from out of that, tahuarangi is the volcanic explosion in the airs that can be seen for miles, as we would have experienced last year with Tonga and their experience, and just seen in the distance and a huge thunderous boom of an explosion from out of nowhere. And so there are some classic examples just recently of how this happens not only in Tonga but for us here out at White Island, Whakaari Island, when that blew. The questions are, ka puta tura te o te whenua, that from underneath the water came this mass explosion just from out of nowhere. And for days you could see the ashes in distant horizons, for miles and miles. So that's where our story starts. And then from out of that, after Maui hauled his great catch, or discovered, he said to his brothers, I need to go and ascertain the appropriate ururuku to become the fish. And from out of that came the birth of te kāhui maunga kōrero, which we talk about the Central Plateau, matua te tapu, particularly for us in terms of taranaki, the name Matu Te Tapu, later to be named Puke o Naki, Puke Haupapa, and then after the Tupuna Rua Taranaki. And as part of the kāhui maunga, ka rere te kāhui maunga ki te pane o te ikaro ki te wakapuare tōna waha. The mountain clan people were summoned to the head of the fish to prise open the mouth of the fish. At that point in time, they were summoned onto the hill known as Pukeatua, where they were given the appropriate rurukus, incantations to prise open the fish. Mai rua tupua, mai rua tāwito, mai te waimanga, I Ahumai, te ara tupua. And from out of te waimanga is our term for a freshwater lake. And so the harbour was a freshwater lake before it is what it is today. And so the term they used for freshwater lake back then was known as te waimanga, hence the name of the origins of the room known as te waimanga is dedicated to the lake prior it to becoming a harbour. And I Ahumai, ngā puke o te ara tupua, o tupo horonuku o tupo hororangi. From out of the freshwater lake, from out of te Waimanga came the two tupua that created te ara tupua, the phenomenal pathway, and they each had specific pathways. And in the wake of the destruction of whātaitai, of ngāke, I Ahumai ngā puke. And from out of the water rose the islands as he escaped. But also, the hills started to rise around here as well. And so the word pukeahu is a term, a mound, a hill that was formed out of platonic plate shifts. And if we look at the word ngāke, taken from the word tōngake, ngāke is a ripping effect, and to do with seismic activity. And it created te awa kairangi, the crevice, when ngāke wound himself up, threw himself out into the barrier, whakangaro atura ki hene moana te hoki mai ki wangi ki a tata. And so in his wake and destruction, as he wound himself out up at Whioro, he created te awa kairangi, bashed his way out into the harbour, out of into the strait, never to return. Kura te waihononga o te waitote me te waimanga, and from that point in time was where the salt water met the freshwater lake for the very first time. The pathway he took was known as Tupo Horonuku, and the pathway that Whātaitai took, which has a huge impact on the western side of the harbour, he wound himself up and became stuck where he is today. So the names in terms of that I've given were actually based on two forms, Paimoanga and Paimoana. And, Paimoanga, Paiwhenua, Paimoana. And if you're looking from out into the water, and if you're looking into this way, particularly when you're standing on whole whenua on the island there and looking into town, you can see specific sites. You can see Ahumairangi, you can see Matairangi, you can see Pukehino, but you can't see Pukeahu. And yet it was once a huge hill where all these buildings are. It was a huge mountain. And within 40 years of the arrival of settlers, they basically have flattened it. And so it's no longer the mountain that it was once known in terms of some of the descriptions. So Pukeahu is a mound, a hill formed out of where? It's formed from out of volcanic mass. And so it's pretty hard to believe now that there was once a huge maunga over there. You just look at the landscape at Mount Cook, up in the back there. You can just imagine what the landscape was like. So Pukeahu is no longer a hill. It is what it is today in terms of the National War Memorial. And so it was once In fact, it was the closest maunga to Te Aropa, or one of the original Te Aropa. These maunga were in close proximity. Matairangi, Pukeahu is close by. Pukehino is just up, let me get this right, up by the Victoria University there. And then Ahumairangi is just behind Parliament there. They're all within close proximity of one another. Ahumairangi is to do with the correlation with the fishing line, arangi tukutuku, ahu mai arangi, formed from out of the heavens. What we're actually talking about is te au kume and te au rona, the magnetic pull. The magnetic pull between Rono Kukumetain, the controller of the tides. And so Ahumairangi is actually formed from out of what they term out of the great landmass shift. And so that's over just behind Parliament. Pukehino, pretty much self-explanatory. The hino is a berry. It's a fruit. It has all the properties of medicinal purposes, food. And you can just imagine, I mean, when I look at the word hino, not only just with berries, it comes all that wildlife that was there. And so these maunga also have a real connection to the story of Tangi Te Kio. So Matairangi, it's pretty much self-explanatory in the words. Mata is facing, e to where, rangi to the sky. If you go up there and lie down on the ground, you'll see a totally different world than if you were just to stand and look down. It's a place where tohunga kōrero, in fact, those celestial navigators or those tohunga like Rangi and them wanting to determine the stars, that actually lie down and go to the highest peak. So Matairangi is to turn and face your head towards the sky. So next time you're up there, lie down up there at night, go up there at night and look at the sky on a clear night. You'll actually see it's a beautiful, I'm not into celestial navigation or don't know too much about that side, but I've done it a number of times and it's beautiful. So Matairangi informs us that, they look towards the stars, as like we've just learning about Matariki and Puana, and the country is taking the holiday on. It is about understanding the celestial stars and what they mean for us. So there's a lot of learning in that. So for the maunga Ahumairangi, born from out of the star, born from the magnetic pull, te au kume me te au rona, Pukeahu is formed from out of the depths of Te Waimanga. Matairangi is looking towards the sky. These are all signs for us, and Pukehino is actually informing us, hey, just imagine with that food resources, medicinal resources or properties, it comes all this wildlife. So and then each of these maunga had a tangi te kio, not just one point. You often hear just the one point is related to Matairangi, tangi te kio. If we break the word kio, and it's quite funny, they say it's a certain screech, but if you look I've looked in every dictionary and it tells me totally different. Kio is actually another word for taumata, puke for summit. Tangi is not the actual crying, it's the music that comes from out of those summits. So tangi te kio also tells me has a strong correlation to waikoko in terms of te kōrero, as a traditional taranaki term for the dense bush and the sounds that came out of it. So tangi te kio is actually, we're talking about the bird life at that point in time. In 1893, Charles Heafy gives a really good description of travelling up the Hutt River, Te Awakai, and it was so definitely not wildlife. Now you imagine what it would have been like if there were no settlers here and all you heard every morning was the deafening sound of the harbour of the wildlife that was here. Amazing. So when we talk tangi te kio, it's not talking at one point, it's talking at many different points. And
that's similar to the kōrero you told us about Te Aoi Tai, Te Akatangi.
Yeah.
That thing.
Yeah. And so at different points, just wake up in the morning if you're in close to a bush or forest and you'll just hear the birds. Kura tangi te kio. Eh? That's what, because ethnographers couldn't understand our science that they put into once upon a time, and unfortunately those that have written have always related tangi te kio to matairaki, or exactly a whole lot of different points, and at different points in time. When I get up early in the morning, if I have to do a dawn ceremony, about like this morning, I got up and at 5 o'clock the birds on Puke Atua were actually singing. So kora te tangi, it's not a certain sad sound, it's a reminder that to us we've forgotten about listening to nature, particularly in the cities, and that we've forgotten that each of these summits, Ahumairangi, Pukehino, Pukeahu, Matairangi, were very important references, I suppose, and many others, like Tākautangi, there's others, that they remind us that we need to continue to tell the story, the correct story of what tangi te kio is. And so, waking up every morning for me reminds me of tangi te kio no matter where I am. If I'm close to Ahumairangi, oh listen, where's the birds? Are they singing? And they do. They do. When I went to go do the cleansing of Parliament at 5 o'clock in the morning, you could hear the birds from up that way, and so tangi te kio has a strong relationship with each of these maunga. In fact, all maunga within Wellington region. Tangi te kio is not one point, it's many points. So these maunga have significant names, and particularly for Pukehino, it tells me that it was a rich resource. A rich resource, that an abundance of bird life, medicinal purposes. I suppose they were like the pharmaceuticals of today, the Bunnings, the Mitre 10s, where you could get those resources, but also the pack and saves, that they were, it just tells me wherever there's hino berries, there's food, there's wildlife, and with all the medicinal purposes. So it tells me that particular hill there was probably one of many that had rich resources. Pukeahu tells me that although it's no longer here, it reminds me that it informs me, and some of the narratives that I've heard, is that there was once a big hill there, but it's really hard to imagine when what we see today in terms of what may have been 200-300 years ago. Ahumairangi informs me the connection between te tai whakarunga, te tai whakararo, or te kauwairunga, te kauwairaro, having that connection between both the celestial and terrestrial, the spiritual, the physical. And Matairangi reminds us sometimes when we need some divine intervention or strength, it pays to look to the stars and get strength from our tupuna. So those are koina te koro o ngā puke. In terms of te Waimanga, well, it was the freshwater lake, and when Ngāki escaped, it invited opportunity, I suppose, not from a economic perspective, but even some more so today. But when te Waitote and te Waimanga met, the saltwater and freshwater, it brought in a different type of life, of species into the harbour. It brought, the powers, the fish that we see that was once abundant. And I remember listening to my mum that when she was a child, they used to set the nets out in Petone Beach and they used to get abundance of food. So it's hard to imagine that today. And so not only did it invite species, different kaimoana and that into the harbour, but it also has a strong correlation back to when Whātaitai became stuck in his attempted escape, that he became stuck and under the water for a long period of time, where over that period of time, he would have attracted all those different kaimoana, pāwa, etc., over a period of time. And then with the great landmass, ka hore te kai a tamanui te rā, tāwhiri mā te mā, as he was lifted out of the ocean, and they say he died immediately, but his wairu transferred. He exposed all the richness that was the wealth that was actually hidden under the water for the very first time, and from out of that came ka puta tara ko tūpo hororangi ka tai mai rā te aitanga pepeke. And from when Whātaitai was lifted out of the water and all the kaimoana that was exposed, just like down in Kaikoura with the great earthquake, all that power, it rotted. And ka tai mai te aitanga pepeke came insects, maggots, fleas, flies, everyone, and they were a different form. And then from where there's maggots and things like that, hara mai te kāwhiro, and all this bird life came, ara tangi te kio. And so its formation is still where it is today, unlike how Wellington City Councils over there, I think it was Wellington District or Borough Council back then, how they changed, how they could easily just give a name to a suburb without even consulting iwi, where Whātaitai is. Whātaitai is in there, it's on the other side, over in a place called as Maupuia up on Mount Crawford there, and he's still there in his full beauty. Known as Motu Kairangi, named by the Maitara people, as Motu Kairangi, and like Te Awa Kairangi, the River of Abundance, and Island of Abundance, pretty much self-explanatory. So coming back, Waitangi Lagoon used to be right up at the top of the embassy there, the embassy, but it actually stemmed from right up at the top of Adelaide Street and came right down. It's still running down under Kent Terrace and Oxford and Oxford Terrace.
So it's from where Basin Reserve, that is it?
Yeah, currently comes under there.
Yeah.
And comes all the way down Adelaide Street, under the Basin Reserve, underground along Kent and Oxford Terrace, and then it comes under, just down by the Waitangi Park there, and the Waitangi Lagoon, a stream actually works out of a swamp. So the names, why I chose them was basically, if I was looking from Matu Island, and as I looked in particularly to this place, when I was asked it, I looked, okay, here's the location, what mountains can I see within close proximity, and while I was up there, I thought about Pukeahu. But Pukeahu not only has a sad story that it's no longer there, Pukeahu's story now is a National War Memorial, which reminds me about if the government could put millions and millions of dollars for a war memorial about these men sacrificing their life overseas and loss of life for land and country that didn't belong to them, that they've forgotten that there's a manual, there's another memorial just hidden behind it, which is a memorial of our people who were in prison for doing exactly the same things that those soldiers done, going to war to fight to save the land. But it wasn't for king and for country, it was for their tupuna. And so here you have a multi-million-dollar national war memorial, and what's tucked away and forgotten about is the history of our people of Taranaki whānui. So, and yet when I was looking from Matairangi, it's not Matairangi, Matairangi, I'm looking at what do I see? What do I see? And one of the closest streams is here. Waitangi, Waimapihirangi is just further down Wakefield Street, in between Willis Street and Wakefield Street. Waikoko actually comes through. No, I stand to be corrected. I think it comes down through Te Aropa. I think I get those two.
Petrol station,
Yeah. Oh no, that's Waimapihirangi. The Z,
yeah.
where the Z is. Yeah, there's Waimapihirangi comes out by down by Te Aro, and the Waikoko comes down between Willis and Wakefield Street, mate. And they actually all fit into Te Waimanga, the freshwater lake. Now, but we have to remember that what was actually swamp, because Waitangi was actually a swamp, and it was a resource for us. Settlers were coming, it's no good, but it was a resource for us in terms of our dye. If we look at, some of the purposes that repo were actually used for, it wasn't only just about dye for your flax and things like that, but it was also a way where our people used to push the dead under the water and leave them there until the skin would rot off, and then they would actually do the hahunga. Like an unveiling, a hahunga, put them in a wakatu pāpaku, and then they have their ceremony. So it was what we saw as a valuable resource, the settlers saw as of no usage towards us. So that knowledge has been lost over many, many years. But what I like about organisations like this is that the bringing of these names back to
but I don't have the kōrero that sits behind that to, I guess the purpose of my pātai is to make sure that what we're doing for these, we do exactly for that ingoa too. So when we do eventually put the text together, which will give you to check and make sure, and we put all these resources around that they're consistent and so that the connections, and that'll be part of our responsibility, as I said earlier, in the induction of our staff, and for us to ensure that we can explain it as such.
Oh yeah. There's actually a more simpler way that in terms of remembering it is through waiata form. Ka huri taku aro ki ngā. Ka huri taku aro ki ngā maunga whakahi piki atu ki mata i rangi a te tiro ki a rangi nui e tu wake nei he ke hoki ki te waimanga. For that? And that can easily be done.
I mean, that is something that I, particularly having come from all the experiences being up the hill, when we did all that stuff for Te Raukaramu. And we come down here, and I was like, man, we have to have something like that here, because to me, that's the only way we can be true to making sure we understand and learn that. It's all good, all well and good having the Pākehā translation of the stories and everything, but that's the next level of making sure that, because the wānanga that we went through with the staff up there, as Ngātawa would have told you, was amazing, because the majority of them non-Māori, but the process was incredible to watch them, because it's not an easy way to, if you've been doing it like we have, it's all right, but when you're not, and you got to go through the discipline of doing that over and over again, and then You know, you heard it on the day when they all got up outside.
And awesome.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And, you know, that would be to me, that would be you know, that's the paitawhiti at the moment to get them to that. And because then as you come here, you go, when you learn all these names in the waiata and then the kōrero that we're going to have on the walls and in whatever format we create to support those resources, then, you know, ko tangata whenua ngā kōrero.
Yeah, no, I can write up a waiata, easy. Yeah, give me about a week.
Gee, that'd be awesome. That'd be awesome. Because, you know, the branding company run, Raymond Otere is his name, who's and he's excited about that opportunity because he didn't know. They weren't told this. So I was saying, you know, this stuff about maunga, we want to pull that through the whole of this floor when they do that. And this stuff about, you know, the white elements of the next floor, pull that through into the workspace. So, and that just makes sense. And again, ke tuia te kōrero ki te wāhi mahi.
Yeah. So, I mean, I base it on pai maunga, pai whenua, pai moana. That if I'm looking out from sea, kei wē ngā pai maunga. If I'm looking out from matairangi, kei wē ngā pai moana.
And so if you were gonna give us a little 2-second on te whanganui a Tara in terms of this, apart from me going, that's the great harbour of Tara, what would be the sort of the perspective you'd bring if we're looking from out there? And
What it is when Ngāki escaped, he invited opportunity to wai tote me te waimanga. But he also invited there then as Pacific navigators when Kupe came into the harbour. Me tōna ko ke kōrero kua kāke ngai, the fires of occupation were already alight, which was then the start of the waka migrants in Tara and them coming into the harbour following Kupe's arrival. And so, you know, and if we put it in its chronological order, following Kupe, there's a strong narrative of Tara coming into the harbour. And the whakapapa between Tara and Te Atia was very close. As you know, through their kuia ronga ueroa. There's the Raudu, Awaniwiarangi, Whātonga had Tara and Tautoki had a rangitāne, so you got the strong relationship between Atiawa and Raudu, Ngai Tara and the rangitāne here. So they actually come from the same kuia. Yeah.
So it's almost, and if I interpret that, it's when you talking about te wai tote and te wai manga coming together and that opportunity that you were describing around, you know, the other kai and then the navigators and all that. I mean, in some ways, we're a continuation of that opportunity in terms of what we're trying to do educationally.
Yeah. So not only after Kupe came, you had all the different iwi that occupied. One of the things that some of my whānau here, they're really upset, they just starts at Te Atiawa on the time 1820. Nothing before that.
Yeah.
So put in chronological order, you've got Ngai Tara, Ngātiawa, Ngai Tara, you've got Rangitāne, you've got the lives of Kaitahu, Kāti Kure, Kāti Māmoe before they went south, then you've got Ngāti Ira, and then you've got us and Ngāti Tō coming. So, funny, my people only see as far as some of my people only see. It all started in 1820. Oh, hello. Put into chronological order.
Yeah.
But if we go back for us to Te Kāhui Maunga, we were here before Kupe. So it just comes around in full circle. But not only did Kupe come in, these iwi came in and occupied the harbour at various points in time. It just so happened, based on the time of conditions, and from 1769, another set of visitors came. The settlers came. So it continues even to this day of that when Ngāki escaped, the Waitote Waimanga came opportunity, and it still exists today when the big cruisers come into our harbour, bringing all that tourism, and particularly the pathway to Pohororangi that Whātaitai took. You got now aerial traffic coming in through national and international flights coming into New Zealand. So, our tupa Ngāki and Whātaitai are pretty creative. You know, they allow for opportunity to come into the harbour. It's no longer once upon a time, it's once upon a reality when we look at the interpretations of it.
Would it be inaccurate for us to build on that opportunity kōrero that you're talking about in terms of, because one of the things that sits across all of us in our Ohu Ahumahi in terms of what we're here for, and I know that's attracted the majority of us to come here, is the opportunity to transform education.
Yes, right. On that note,
Yes.
So we've still got this book, and they've all gone out to lunch.
Okay.
So I'm going to intercept him when he arrives.
Goodbye.
Just to, you know.
Thank you.
I found
Thank you.
a room for the end.
Jordan.
But it's pretty messy for the rest of the afternoon.
I'm not sure how much longer Kura wants to.
Come.
Okay. But, yeah. So would that be accurate for us to? Because I mean that's the thing that excites me listening to that, is that we talk to all the people that we go out and talk to in terms of trying to transform education. It's like, this is a golden opportunity we've been given that we haven't been given ever, to actually, really look at what's been happening in the education space, which hasn't, if you talk about use Pukeahu as the example, in terms of the arrogance of the colonisers, think they could knock 45 metres off the top, just like that, and use it for Gouthney Street and Buckle Street and all that is there. That sort of mentality is just pervaded ever since through the education system and all that. It's about this one way of thinking, it's about this way, and funnily enough, all the ones who always suffer are our people, our Pacific cousins, wahine, te hunga whaikaha, that just don't have a voice in that. And so this is what we're all trying to do through the mahi, is to transform that, to bring their voice up. And therein lies where I'm kind of wanting to make sure that if we can follow that opportunity narrative that you're talking about, that was created by the meeting of the fresh and the, in terms of we're still trying to realise that opportunity that was, because we've been brought in here to refresh education.
Yeah.
Well, it's part and parcel of that opportunity, The way I see it is, of course, because with colonial knowledge, if you look at the tides are turning, they're now coming back and wanting to learn more about mātauranga Māori from a Te Ao Māori perspective. So the rise of Te Ao Māori is coming back through different forms, through different mechanisms. And so classic example is the Tohunga Suppression Act, where we couldn't practice our karakia and all that gala stuff. And then Rangi and them just smashed it with this new legislation put in place, and we put the Tohunga Suppression Act to bed, where you see 11 of those guys doing all their karakia that morning. If we were back in 1908, they would have been, fined, put into prison. So it's I don't see it as opportunity. I see it's the rise as that story. Kei raro I te motu whare ki e kōrero e ore is tono underneath this earth and counterpane still lurks our way of living.
Because I think to me, therein lies that understanding that and being able to impart that to our kaimahi to understand is like, actually that's what we're assisting. It's not us who's doing it, but there's these other elements coming, and what we're trying to do is to connect the right places to help bring that out in the education.
Well, there's a whole nation out there that is unapologetic, and it's the Kohanga Nation. They are just so strong and confident of who they are, and if we go back to 1857, when they with the Education Act, where they weren't allowed to speak English or Māori, they've if you lose a language, you lose a culture. You lose identity. Kohanga Reo Nation, they are unapologetic. They're not going to apologise, say, this is my culture, this is my identity, this is who I am, and people like yourself and I have experienced that, don't bring your Māori mumbo jumbo into this office, not only us, but many have experienced that. Whereas this next generation say, we've had enough. Our culture's coming in through the door, and we're going to bash those doors down. Like me, I no longer leave my culture at the door. It comes in with me 24/7, and when I go home, it comes with me wherever I go. So, that's the opportunity in terms of our mātauranga and the way we were doing things differently. Who would have thought just last Friday, the hauora, you know, we're now co-governance. So why is it they're coming back to te iwi Māori for the solutions to take care of the future? We've always believed, we've always known that. It's just the storytellers of the time have failed to tell our story.
Want to leave and listen.
Yeah, yeah. And so now opportunities like this, not only just telling the narratives of this place and space, but what they actually mean and how the values that they bring. Pokiahu reminds me of, we're not careful,
Yeah.
we could just lose something just like that. So it's a reminder, although it's a name, it's the history that it's a reminder that
Yeah.
not only just settlers, but legislation could just wipe it out just like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the tightrope, and I say the tightrope because it is a tightrope at the moment that we're really finely balanced on, is, you know, particular for the likes of Brenda and myself who are in roles like mine around, you know, everyone's, like you say, ki te hia kai te unga o te ao whānui o Aotearoa tēnei me te mātauranga Māori. But it's like, hey, we can't go down the Disneyfication stream of your fellas kōrero ka ngake me whai taitai when that happens.
Yeah.
It has to be te kōrero tukuio, you know, and actually like what Rangi and them did.
Yeah.
They translated those karakia and made the decision, well, and these people understand it properly, how are they going to actually value it?
Yeah.
But ours is not to be the people to do that. It's to figure out how we make, you know, we enable through that avenues of relationships that we create these kind of kōrero, so that we can then, okay, ka wai, we understand that we can impart that as you have told it in a way that's going to be digestible to our kaimahi. When we engage with people that come into this whare,
Yeah.
we can talk to them about these names and give them a living and breathing example about this is how you do it, which is the big thing that we want to do. Is that in terms of the change that we're doing internally, mama noia to do it inside the whare, is how you get it outside your whare. That's the challenge, you know.
Yeah.
And so the thing for us is like, how do we walk it? You know, like it's not just hey ingoa ki runga i te pakitara. It's how we make sure they live and breathe. And,
Well, Matairangi is a classic one. You don't have to go up to the hill. Go into a park and look up at the sky, because I've done that with my nieces and nephews last year. It was in the middle of summer. They said, we're going, well, let's go sleep out under the stars in the middle of the whiti park.
Yeah.
And they, when we get good, who cares? It's ours. And so we put beads on there, you know, and then I said, you know, and what about it? No, it'll be a fun night. And we just looked at the stars and they loved it.
Yeah.
They loved it. So, and I said, well, I don't know too much about the stars, but what do you think this star's saying? And then we get our apps out and go, yeah, this is...
Yeah.
So, when you look at the values that each of these words bring, te waimanga is about the fresh concepts, fresh water, fresh ideas, fresh concepts, fresh new life. The waitote is that element that, you know, that salt water, that bad taste you get in your mouth. Kōkō is actually, or the kōkō water, is the density of the forest. And it has a strong correlation with the mōpō. Kōkō is the hoo.
Okay.
And so that tells me that, you know, we have to be alert continuously. The mōpō is always awake at night, you know. What's to say? Moia te poi, moia te taia, always be prepared for the unexpected. So those values that come through from that, te waimāpihirangi, or waimapi, you know, it's something that's springing from out of somewhere. So it doesn't only relate to water. Ideas spring from out of somewhere, you know. They don't just appear from some reason, and it goes back to that pupuki te hiri, pupuki te mara, pupuki te wānanga, pupuki te kōrero. It's all that from out of somewhere deep in the brain, an idea is brewing, you know, wai kapihi mai. And waitangi is just, you know, when we look at this, a lot of people, as soon as they hear the word tangi, they think of someone crying. Waitangi, like te ākautangi, has a language of its own.
Oh,
Listen to what the river is saying, like the Wanganui people. you know, they listen to the river intently, you know. And so Te Ako Tangi, the same thing, as you know, listen to the waves bashing on the reefs there on the barrier. So understanding reminds us about reconnecting with our environment. Yeah.
So just for you two, you know where Pōneke Rugby Grounds is? So where that street borders on Pōneke Rugby Grounds, just across the road, there's some whare and everything. There's like looks like kind of like a cliff. What kind of cliff? Well, when you took us on the Wānanga for our way up there was a cliff, because there was the general Te Awahi Taia, and those cliffs were called Te Ako Tangi, the Crying Cliffs. But it wasn't about tangi. It was because the waves smashing up against the rocks, and the forest, as he was talking about with all the manu, was right up to the edge of the cliffs. So if you're standing there, you can imagine the cacophony of noise that's just overwhelming you, because you've got manu and everything going crazy over here, and the moana going
Yeah.
So it's a pretty mean picture when you were standing, on the street, on the tasti, looking up there, but we were all going, far out, yeah. Because all through there was water, was the sea.
And so the values that come out of the names, when I look at Pukehino, it's just not about the hill of the berries.
No.
What actually came with that. The medicinal purposes, the medicinal properties, the food produce, but not only the berries that attracted wildlife and food resources, the whole abundance of that. And so if we really take time to really dissect those words, you can then think, okay, and the rangi is not just only the sky. Unfortunately, the ethnographers have translated Papa Tuanuku and Ranginui as Earth Mother and Sky Father. And if we look at solid matter, that's totally different, goes right to the core of the Earth. And if you look at Ranginui, universal space, you're talking, which makes sense in terms of our dialogue when you hear them, we're talking about the 12 heavens, and we're actually talking about 12 universes that sciences have yet to discover. I think they've discovered one.
Yeah.
If they think they have.
Because, as you unpack these things, and as we listen and stuff, and I'm looking at the different names from an even more informed perspective, because I had an idea at least